So today is Mother's Day. Maybe that's why the hall's a little emptier than usual. Maybe some people are with their mothers, and maybe some mothers have their children with them and they're celebrating this morning. Some of us, our mothers are not close by, so we're not with them, or our children aren't close by. Some of us, our mothers are no longer alive. We are orphans, so to speak. And yet, if there is one common fact for all human beings, is we wouldn't be here without a mother. Is that clear? I mean, it's funny, in each religion, you'll hear more about that next week. I believe in Christianity, Mary was the mother, right? It was just, Joseph wasn't the father. Is that correct? You know, I'm not going to get into that, but they say the same thing in Buddhism, as you'll learn next week. The Buddha had a mother, Maya, but she was not impregnated by his father. We'll talk about that next week, because again, that seems to be the way people like to have it, right? But coming back to Buddhism, so it is considered in Buddhism a unique and wonderful thing to be born a human being. Not necessarily, we're not talking about the conditions that we're born into, but just being born a human being. Because in Buddhism it has there's a kind of a cosmological sense that people can be born in many different ways, right? So we can be born. I mean, we could have been born as an animal or an insect or a bird or a lizard. You know, there are lots of. We won't go into lots of different opportunities if we're born, but we were born human beings. And being born a human being is considered quite wonderful, because it is only in the human form that we have this capacity to become a Buddha, or in more not so highfalutin kind of ways, we have the opportunity to transform and change. If we're born a dog, many people say, gee, wouldn't be bad being a dog, but a dog will always be a dog. A bird will always be a bird. You know, they'll never find another way of being, right? They'll never be able to look at their life and go, this life doesn't really work for me. I think I'd like to do something else with my life, right? Animals are just doomed to just endlessly doing what they do. The human being, as a human being, we have this incredible gift. No matter what the circumstances are of our life, we have the power to change. Why? Because we have consciousness. We can be aware. And more than just consciousness, because animals have a certain kind of consciousness too, we can have a consciousness that is aware of itself. In other words, we have the capacity, which is quite unusual, we have the capacity to be self-reflective. We have the capacity to observe ourselves, right? We have the capacity of observing our condition, our conditioning, and having the thought, there's got to be a better way than this. Right? Has anybody ever had that thought in their life? Situations, relationships, work, there's got to be a better way than this. Right? Does everybody understand what I'm saying? This capacity that a human being has to be aware and to be self-reflected, and also to see options and possibilities in life, is not available in the animal realm, the bird realm, the reptile realm, other kinds of realms. So this capacity that all human beings have, potentially, is considered in Buddhism very special. I mean, are there any questions about that? So because we have this special birth, we would be very grateful to the person or persons who gave us this gift, right? If somebody gave you, I was about to say $1 million, but maybe that's not a lot of money in these days, right? All right. If somebody gave you $1 billion, right? Would you be grateful to them? And if you saw, wow, this $1 billion, there's so many things I can do with this, right? There's such potential here. So you'd be very grateful to this person who gave you this gift that has such potential. So just very practically and obviously, we were given this gift of human life by our parents, right? But traditionally, most importantly, was the mother. Because the mother is the one in which we gestated, in which we grew. And traditionally in the Buddhist tradition, they would say, a mother's pregnancy is not easy. Any mothers here ever been pregnant? What? And was it all just good times? What? No. Right? Not good times. Nausea, uncomfortability as the baby grows, other kinds of side effects, bloatedness, right? I mean, there's all kinds of discomfort, and that a mother goes through, and yet she goes through it, doesn't she? Or we might say she went through it for us. Right? She nurtured us within her own body. And then traditionally, delivery was also incredibly, traditionally difficult and painful for the woman. Right? A lot of discomfort, a lot of pain, great pain. Screaming, you know what I mean? Wailing, it was such pain. Right? And yet, she what? She did it. She went through all that. For who? For me, for you. Right? And then this little, anybody ever seen a newborn? Anybody seen a newborn? Really pretty? Yucky. Ever see a newborn? They come out all covered with bloody kind of gook and the staff usually, cleans them up quickly. Yeah. And the mother looks at this little thing like it's the most what? Beautiful, precious thing in the world. Right? Is that true? Yeah. So that means that happened to us, you see. Right. And again, the tradition continues. Not only did our mothers bring us into life and give us birth, which is into this realm, which is so special and unique, but also she was very diligent in keeping us alive, right? She held us, she fed us, she nurtured us. We kept her up all night, right? But she was willing to do that for us. She sacrificed herself for us, And if anybody, knows about things like that or been through that experience or can reflect on that, can go, that takes an incredible amount of what? selflessness. Right? To take on that all the discomforts of holding a child and giving life to a child for 9 months within you, and then all the discomforts and difficulty of taking care of an infant, preserving the life of an infant, nurturing an infant, right? And if the infant doesn't get through those early stages, it will often what? Die. So she kept us alive. Right? So when you think about it that way, and you think about a human being sacrifice themselves for me, didn't think about themselves and put my needs ahead of theirs, right? We can't help but what? Be grateful, thank you. We can't help but be grateful. Now, in traditional meditation, it continues on, right? And I'm going to talk about the way mothers are used in the tradition of selfless service and compassion. Now, as life went on, let's talk about our culture. Accepting that in those early years, our mothers gave us life and protected us and nurtured us and kept us safe and took us to the doctor and, all that kind of stuff so we could be alive. And for most people, that's all true, and that's very wonderful. She wasn't paid to do that, was she? Now, so I learned a lot of this in the Tibetan culture. So in the compassion tradition, the Bodhisattva tradition, a mother's love is the archetype for how to be for all of us. Right? Because it's also considered that even after those early years, she still always was there for us, fed us, clothed us, took care of us. We were always special to her. Right? She always supported us. She always loved us. So in traditional Asian Buddhism, and again, Buddhism came from Asia, a mother's love is incredibly pure. Okay? Pure love. And many people traditionally would see mothers in that pure way. Is that true? Well, now, so in a lot of the Buddhist teaching, they talk about, what's the archetype for how a bodhisattva or a practitioner relates to all sentient beings, like a mother with their children. A mother loves their children. A mother cares for their children. A mother only wants good for her children. A mother loves all her children, even the naughty ones. Right? Right? Even the naughty ones, even the bad ones, the mother always thinks, well, she's really good. Just having a bad day. She's always making excuses for the kids, right? I used to say a lot, she'll visit her son, the serial killer, and say, when somebody interviews her, but he really was a nice boy. Right? He really was a good boy. I don't understand. Something must have happened. So this is the archetype of a mother's love. Now, the interesting thing was, I remember when I first, with having Tibetan teachers and hearing this teaching. Now imagine the same things in Vietnam. I mean, has anybody ever read Thich Nhat Hanh's book, A Rose for Your Pocket? It's beautiful. Very short. It's small. It's called A Rose for Your Pocket. A rose, it's... Anyhow, he loved his mother. Anyhow, it's about mothers, and it's very personal. I would ask you to read it. It's short. A rose, anyhow, you could find it. So anyhow, I remember telling them, you know how you talk about mothers as this archetype of all good, but in America, a lot of people don't see their mothers that way. Is that true? Yes. They were dumbfounded. Couldn't believe it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have a lot of conflict with their mothers, or see their mothers as bad mothers, or see their mothers unloving mothers. And the last thing they would do would model their relationships around how to love sentient beings based on the way their mother was. Right? You know what I'm talking about in our culture. So there's a little bit of dissonance there. And again, they were kind of dumbfounded, that could be. Because I grew up in a culture where this was so dominant. So it's Mother's Day, right? And many of us maybe had different kind of mothers. Right? On the one, if there's a continuum, over here we have what? Who's the archetype mother? What? Mary? Could be Mary, Mother Mary. What? Mother Earth. I don't know. Mother Teresa. But how about in popular culture? I was thinking, when I grew up in the 50s, it was a show called Father Knows Best. It's like, right? That's the archetype of the father. I don't know if there was one for a mother. Was there one for, like a show that, just a wonderful, loving, caring mother? What? Leave It to Beaver? Oh, June Beaver. All right, anybody know? These ideal mother. Was she an ideal mother? Right? Donna Reed. Yeah, that was right. These right. I'm really going back. There was a something called. They call Mama or something? I remember Mama. Yeah. Okay. So, and all these shows, Mama was what? Wonderful, loving, selfless, always there, right? Okay. Yeah. So what do you do if that was not your experience? So if that wasn't your experience, where you hear these, how do you be a bodhisattva? How do you relate to sentient beings? Well, like a mother for her children. You see, that's the way they would leave it. And like everybody would get it, right? Like a mother for her child, and we go, oh, now I get it. Or they have a thing where they refer to all beings, and they call them motherly sentient beings. Now, why do they call them motherly sentient beings? Because in their cosmology of many, many lifetimes, they say at some point in the past life, of these thousands and tens of thousands, every human being could have been your mother, right? So when you encounter a human being, when you think, oh, this could have been my mother, you're immediately, what? Connected, nice, kind. Oh, so motherly sentient being. So what do you do if you don't have that reference? If that's not your natural reference, right? So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to get practical. So again, I think to begin, no matter how the relationship between yourself and your mother might have developed, or your father for that matter, Father's Day is coming up, the fact that perhaps, except for extreme cases, our mother did hold us within her body and endured lots of discomfort and pain for us. We would not be here. We can't remember that, but that is a fact. Right? Another human being sacrificed themselves, put up with all kinds of discomfort for me, right? Gave birth to me. And I'm only alive today because she, he, whoever, kept me alive. Fed me, clothed me, washed me, took me to the doctors. So in that, if we just kind of left it there, should we have gratitude to that person? What do you think?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Should we have gratitude to that person? Or not? Anybody think not? Or anybody think, why have gratitude? But if you think about it, take your own life right now, and if somebody said, for the next 9 months, I am going to give you a very uncomfortable physical feeling that's often going to be painful, right? Highly uncomfortable. For the first 3 months, it would make you nauseous all the time. For the last 3 months, it's going to make you really uncomfortable. And then you're going to go through a very painful process, and then you're going to have this little thing that's going to take up 24/7 of your life. Anybody ready to sign up for that? Okay. But most of us wouldn't, would they? Most of us wouldn't. And yet, now we could say, did our mothers consciously know what they were getting into? Well, there's a whole thing where people say, there's a way that human beings forget, and they just remember, the good things. So I forget what's the term. Well, selective memory, but it's selective amnesia or something. But somehow, all the mother remembers is is the good stuff, and forgets about the 9 months of. Okay, so so just for that, should we not be grateful to somebody who went through that for us and gave us life? And so, and now I think we have, for those of us who it didn't continue that way, and may have had a mother who was less than loving, less than nurturing, could have been downright, what? I was about to say evil, but that sounds a little extreme, but could be, I'm just going to another extreme. Because of her own causes and conditions, which we didn't understand as children. And so we did not grow up with that kind of ongoing mothering. That could be. But yet the fundamental fact that she did all these things we did makes her worthy of our gratitude forever. And so, this archetype of this mother, even if, again, as the years went on, she wasn't able to live up for that, she did do it during the pregnancy, and she did do it for a number of years after. Right? She put our needs ahead of her own. And that experience of motherhood and that experience of a mother's selflessness, love for their child is something that is pervasive among human beings, right? All cultures, all religions, all social classes, right? That is a common experience of motherhood. It's universal. And hopefully it will continue it. So I think it's very important to have a model. I mean, that's what we're talking about. So when Asian Buddhists or Tibetan Buddhists or others were looking for a model to teach people like us about love, selfless love, grateful love that puts others ahead of myself, love that wants others to be happy, love that doesn't want others to suffer. They have traditionally used the archetype of a mother. Right? Does her mother just naturally want her children to be happy? No. Does her mother naturally want her children not to suffer? When a mother sees that her children are suffering or going through a difficult time, does a mother want to do anything she can to help? Right. So we see, having an archetype gives us a model. Because human beings, we need models. Why do we have this up behind us, you see? Is this the Buddha? Or it's a representation of the Buddha? Do we know whether this is the way he looked? Absolutely not. But this is an archetype, a representation that reminds us of an enlightened being and their qualities. We do that to inspire us, right? Human beings, we need material representations, right? Like somebody mentioned, Mother Mary, right? In Christianity, it's an archetype, right? So if you grew up Catholic, what did you know about Mother Mary? I wasn't going to grow up Catholic. Mother Mary is what? What? Well, she's a saint but what are her qualities? She's all loving. What else?
Virgin.
What?
Virgin. She was virgin.
Oh, she was a virgin. Oh, that's true. But what? She was wise. She was pure. She was, She was good. And if you called upon her, what would she do? Stay up on the statue? If you called upon her, what? What? She'd interview, she'd help you, she'd intercede for you, right? So if you think about it, that's an archetype, just like, a mother. You see, it's an archetype. But having those models, and most religions have those kinds of models, inspire us, but also give us a reference point to how to be, right? So I'm just guessing. So a young Catholic girl could say, who's your model? Mary. I mean, it's like, now perhaps your own mother was not as good a model, but it's good to have a model, right? So it's good to have an archetype. And so traditionally, a mother was an archetype of this, of the capacity of a human being to be loving, kind, selfless, always helping, right? Non-judgmental. And always just being there for her children. So when you hear in our tradition about, how do you want to show up in life with other human beings, you want to show up the way a mother shows up for her children. I mean, that's the way we're taught. That's kind of the example. And so therefore, our relationship with all beings is we are kind, we are caring, We don't want them to suffer. We take joy in their joy. All the kinds of things, if you come tomorrow night, you'll be meditating on. I mean, you can think about, are these just abstractions? Or does this manifest in real life? Oh, it does manifest in real life, and traditionally you'd say it manifests in a mother. And these are mothers who maybe do not have PhDs in human psychology. Right? These can be mothers of all types and all backgrounds, but they have that basic human capacity, right? Or the potential for that capacity. And as we know, many of those women, mothers and fathers, never manifested those capacities. Why not? Because of their own causes and conditions, because the way they were nurtured or they were raised. But that doesn't mean for each of us who are following a spiritual path that we cannot have that model and that reminder, oh, this is the way I want to learn to show up in this world, to see all beings as my children, and to relate to them the way a mother, father would relate to their children. Now, obviously, it doesn't have the same intensity as kind of real relationships, with your children or your parents, but it's a model. It gives us something to live up. It gives us a way of being in the world. Oh, motherly sentient being. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today was the inner. The inner mother. Now, what did I mean by that? Because as you know, it is not uncommon in our current age because of past events, experiences, growing up in families where there wasn't, these ideal parents who didn't actually raise us in that way. We didn't have models of altruistic, selfless love, caring, support, right? Many of us might have grown up in homes where that was absent. And many of us might have grown in homes where there was often the opposite, right? Because of the woundings of these human beings, probably from their childhood and the difficulties of their life. So oftentimes, we as adults, we often experience that within ourselves. There are aspects of ourself that are suffering. And what we often find is our relationship with those aspects of ourself is anything but loving. Anything but kind, anything but patient, anything but understanding. For many of us, we are, in relationship to ourselves, the unloving mother, the unloving father. Which is very interesting, isn't it, to see it that way. Because we're mostly aware externally of what we might have not gotten from our mothers or fathers. And we often bear that with sadness, disappointment, anger, resentment, all kinds of variations. But the more, I think, significant piece for many of us is that not having grown up with that part of ourselves being nurtured by those that raised us, And especially if we were brought up in ways where there was indifference or there was actually negativity toward us, we often have become that kind of parent with ourselves. Where we are unaccepting, unloving, impatient. And even worse, we are very critical, non-supportive, angry, disappointed with ourselves. We have internalized, that external, and we've become it for ourselves. And that may affect our relationships with others, and we are that way with others. Or for some of us, we just keep it to ourselves. Right? I mean, when I was a therapist and I would, work with people, and when I began to, they'd share with me their internal dialogue, which was less than loving and supportive and complimentary. It was all, the inner critic, that one. I mean, and I'd say to them, I said, well, can you tell me exactly what you say to yourself? Like the exact words. And they'd have to. They were often embarrassed. You know what I mean? These things they say to themselves, but I've got to really get them to say these things to themselves. And then I'd say, is this the way you speak with your children? Or is this the way you speak with so-and-so or so-and-so? Or if you're a teacher, is this the way you'd speak? And they, you know what they'd say? No, I would never speak to them that way. You wouldn't. And I'm sort of playing with them. Why not? Because it's not good for them. It's not good for them. I would never talk to anybody I cared about this way. Well, that's interesting. You talk to yourself this way. What does that tell you about your relationship with yourself? This is very important. And I think this, again, is very unique to us as a culture, Americans. We have this kind of, a lot of times when I would talk to Tibetans about these kind of things, they look at me like, what are you talking about? The inner critic is like, what? The things we think are so normal, in our culture, we don't really, pretty abnormal. But yet, I think they're very much part of our culture. And so I think this, this internalization of the good mother, so to speak, is not only, like it's been traditionally in Buddhism, gives us a model of how to relate to the external, to the people in the world. I think it's more important for us, it gives us a model of how to relate to ourselves. We end when? Oh. Yeah, so close your eyes. And let's reflect on this. Why don't we kind of go through this kind of... So ask yourself now, just go back to your relationship with your mother. And ask yourself, what, if I was to kind of summarize, what was the model there? What was the model? And again, it's not like she ever sat us down and gave us the model, but just, and it may not be real, but it's yours. When you think of your mother, what do you think about? loving, kind, always there for me. Came home from school, her eyes lit up, or absent, too busy, I was in the way, critical, judgmental. I'm just throwing things out just to get you thinking, but we don't often realize that how we are being conditioned and was so strongly conditioned in our childhood, where we learned about, how to be a woman, how to be a man, how to be a mother, how to be a father, how to be So just think, what were your models? So when I think about a mother, not in an ideal way, but really based on my experience, and again, just the truth, what comes to mind? And again, for many of us, it could be mixed. Not everybody's good, not everybody's bad, not everybody's this or that, perfect or totally imperfect. But yet there are some, major characteristics that we experienced. Please close your eyes and really reflect. And just be honest. We're not nobody's gonna say it out loud. When I think of my mother, what do I really, in reality, what was the model there? Was she accepting? Was she critical? Positive? Negative? Was her love unconditional, the unconditional love of a mother? Or was it conditional? I had to be a certain way to get her attention, to get her positiveness. I don't know, what did you learn? Unconsciously, not consciously. These things might never have been, spelled out. But you just learn it by life. And when I think of mother, based on the reality of my life, what comes to mind? And I know, some of you may have worked through some stuff with your mother and you kind of understand her causing conditions and all that, but I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you what was the reality of that model for you, for the child? So let's go external. So if whatever that model was, is that a good model to really support and nurture me and my relationships with people in the world? Or did I need another model? How did that model teach me to be with other beings? How to be in relationship? And again, I know a number of you, we've done all kinds of Dharma work, therapeutic work, other kinds of work. But just looking at that very powerful conditioning. So based on that model, how do I enter the world? How I've historically entered the world of relationships. Not even just outwardly, but like inwardly. Do I enter the world of relationships with great ease and openness, giving love, expecting love, kind of like one side of the continuum, or very different than that? And then just leaving that for a moment, you can continue this on your own, but then inwardly, what is the model of how I relate to myself? Is it in a loving, accepting, patient, always supportive, always there? Or have I internalized something very different, unaccepting, critical, judgmental? So this is really getting into really being really clear about your internal dialogue. I used to joke with some of my clients when they tell me the things they said to each other. I said, I'm going to have to call the abuse hotline. That's that's emotional abuse. We talk that way to ourselves. And the interesting thing, some of us in our relationships with others, we do manifest a certain degree of kindness, caring, nurturance, compassion. We have a split, but we're not that way with ourselves. That's also true. I mean, some people it sort of affects everything, but some people they kind of able to build a kind of a wall, how we manifest these qualities for others, because somehow we know that's the way to be, and yet we cannot manifest them toward ourselves, which is interesting. Some people say, well, I can forgive others, but I can't forgive my mother. Yeah. Interesting. So we have time. I'd like to open this up. I hope any questions, comments, short, but questions. Any questions about this? What's coming up? What strikes you about this discussion? And Brian, people online can they can just raise their hand, and you can just tell me, or you can call on them rather than chatting it in.
Okay, so those online, you can just raise your virtual hand and I'll call on.
Yes. Hold on a second. Thank you. Thank you, Brett. Again, we use the mic because people online can't hear what's going on in the hall.
I would say for most of my life, I was just focused on the negative aspects, and it took the longest time for the kind of...
You talk about your mother?
Towards my mother.
Yeah,
Yeah, very, very much so. And not that there wasn't truth to it, but I could not see in any way the other side of it, such as the gratitude, you were talking about it at length. And for decades and decades and decades. And it's really only, the last 10 or 15 years. I actually do think that hearing you talk about it has really helped me in that way. And I am really grateful for that. And I can kind of hold both now much better than I ever could before.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And again, here you are, sitting here in the hall, having been a practitioner of the Dharma for many decades and having other good things in your life, right? Friends, family, wife, all because of that woman who gave birth to you. I mean, when you think about it, you go, yeah, none of this would have been possible without her. Yeah, so both are true. Yeah, good. Who else? Yes. And don't be shy. We're all friends.
I think it's quite common, and it was for me, for children to look for models in other people, too, that are lacking in their own mother.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was always curious about other people's mothers when I was at their house and how they did things, and, attracted to teachers who are nurturing
That could be.
and other people. And I think, therefore, I built up a model for myself that was a composite of my mother's very good traits, and she did have them, but also other people who just did things differently and related differently to their children.
No, I think that's excellent. I mean, we do have that capacity, right? To
Sure.
create. Again, we're often not conscious that that's what we're doing, but that's, I think, what you're saying you did. You just kind of, in your own way, with the good things in your mother and other models, teachers, other family members, or, you kind of, you gave yourself a model
I also believe that
of how to be.
sometimes our mothers did things that they thought were good for us. One of my mother's favorite expression was, "How else are you going to learn
Right.
if I don't criticize you constantly?"
I mean, but again,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
again,
And
they all,
as an adult, you look back and you go, well, I understand what she was trying to do. And some of it was actually good. It did take,
yeah, I mean, it's all, it's hard to judge that all, I mean, a lot of people, in our days were a little different, but a couple of generations ago, people grew up hard, right? A lot of difficulties just surviving, and so the message, you had to be tough. You can't show your feelings, you got to be tough, you got to suck it up, was we might go now emotionally. That's like, there's all kinds of problems from that. But I mean, that was kind of an advice of somebody who was trying to prepare you for life, which they thought was going to be very hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And the opposite, the mollycoddling and the constantly doing things for our kids is not the right answer either. So we have to work and
Yeah, yeah,
find a way that actually balances what they need.
yeah. It's not easy being a parent. Yeah. Who else?
We have somebody online.
Yes.
Bruce Costa. I'm going to unmute him or ask him to unmute himself.
Good morning. Thank you, Brian. Good morning, Fred. Good morning, beautiful community. Thank you, Fred, for your beautiful teaching today. So, this is funny. In my 60s now, I'm reflecting on the many, many years of therapy I spent in my 30s with and then regarding my mother.
Mm-hmm.
As my therapist said, yeah, she can go. You're the one with the problem, And then, raising my own children, I reflect on how when you're raising your eldest, nobody, that's your first one. You're making every mistake possible.
Oh, yeah.
I was her first one. And then as I get older, I come to understand she's the standards I wish I could hold her to are in my head, and she is not equipped to attain them. She literally doesn't. It's like yelling at a person in a wheelchair for not running, And that's helped me understand my relationships with many people. But here's the thing. I still fall into the trap, man. She's now an 88-year-old hoarder.
Hold
And
on. Your mother is 88?
yes,
Well, what was that
and
word? Ford? What was it?
hoarder.
Hoarder.
Yes, and I worry about the safety of her living conditions. And when I try to clean up for her, it offends her deeply. So like I go through this process of multiple trash bags coming out of her refrigerator, and she hates it. She hates me taking her moldering food, and I get frustrated.
Yeah.
And I don't see the limits. Why? How can I just be kind and accepting and not fall into this trap that I would describe as virtuous?
Is her what?
I would say my heart is in the right place, and I'm thinking I'm being virtuous, and I'm wrecking her. I'm wrecking the relationship.
Yeah, so that's, so life is messy, Bruce. Have you noticed that? And there are no simple answers. And yeah, I mean, what can I say? You have a relationship with this woman, right? She's your mother. At a certain point, I mean, I know many, many people who say, yeah, I really don't like my mother that much, or I don't like what the kind of person my father or mother has become. A lot of people say that. But yet, I'll say, well, you don't have to go visit them. I mean, there's no law that says, they're adults, you're an adult. There's no law. Well, I try to kind of take an extreme just to kind of get them to respond. I'll say, well, but they are, she is my mother and I feel responsible for her. Okay, then that's what the relationship's about. One can, feel a sense of responsibility, and like you say, you're the son, and she hoards and she lives in unhygienic conditions, and you want to go in there and do everything you can, but at the same time acknowledge, that I don't have that loving, warm, fuzzy, kind of relationship with her, and that's okay. Because following up what I said in the traditional way, we do owe them something. They did give us life. right? They did give us life, the most precious thing. And I would not be here, none of us would be here doing what we're doing if it wasn't for them. So irrespective of the emotional and the other, relationship, they still are, they still are the ones that give us life. We still have this biological connection, right? And, that could be enough. I mean, I don't think we should feel guilt or shame, because some of these things, are very painful, And some of these human beings who are our mother and father, had so much of their own suffering that they could not be there for us. But we just do what we need to do, Bruce, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Anybody else? Yeah, in the back?
I just wanted to say that I had a very loving mother
You have a very loving mother.
and very selfless mother, and I'm very grateful for her.
Yeah. Wonderful. TD? And again, other people who aren't used to raising their hand and taking the mic, you can step into this. Yes, Didi?
So my relationship with my mother was very complicated. I remember a history of walking on eggshells
Yeah.
around her. And yet, she died when I was 30. So I've now lived more years without her.
Yeah.
And I'm actually wearing a blouse she made for herself a long time ago. And yeah, in spite of it all, I still feel that like loving connection.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it was almost as if she was just so thrilled that I were alive and breathing. So I did know that. And I have worked many years in healing the relationship. And during the meditation, I felt myself holding her and being her mother
Yeah.
and letting her know it was okay.
Yeah, good.
And it was very sweet. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said, and I think that's very true, At a certain point, we accept she was who she was. I mean, sounds a little simplistic. Not only that she was who she was, but who you are is actually more emotionally mature and wise than she ever was. And now it's your turn to be the parent, because she just did not have that ability. And that's a wonderful healing. It just, again, that's the freedom, of stepping out of roles and just going, oh yeah. If I'm the parent and she's the child, this relationship works. Right? It's my job to be understanding, accepting, nurturing. My problem for the last 30 years was I expected her to do those things, right? And now you look back and go, well, of course she didn't do them. She didn't have a clue. Can you feel how, that's the freedom of going, yeah, this relationship's got to be healed, and I got to stop waiting for her to be the one who you know what I mean? It can come from me. I can step into this role. Yeah, so that's freedom. Who else?
We have a person online, a Peter Arizu.
Oh, Peter.
Peter, you have to unmute. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Fred, that's beautiful. I'm really, it's such a huge subject, and I was there. I was there for my birth, and I was there for her death, and I know a lot about my mother, and her own dilemma. Born in the Depression, being someone who, was abandoned by her mother. So it was interesting some of the work that I've done, I go all the way back to a baby being born into someone who doesn't want this to happen.
No.
But the baby is like really hurting. And and as I grow up, I'm also dyslexic and I know a lot of other things. And when I was difficult, and no one knew it, I didn't know it. The teachers didn't know it. I was a difficult child, and it was difficult for my mother. And I perceived it as I wasn't loved, and I hated her for not loving me. But it's not true, of course. And but what I think what's amazing is how it's played out in my life.
Mhm.
It actually has contributed to my relationship with Betsy, my wife. It's amazing because I go through so many things with her because she plugs me in to my mother. And so, I have this love-hate relationship with my mother, my wife. And it's so revealing because I mean, I go all the way through it, all the way to her death. And I'm so grateful for if it wasn't for my mother, my wife, I wouldn't be awake. It's like understanding that who I am as you, as everybody, is due to my mother, wife. And the tango that I've gone through with Betsy, loving her and hating her. And and I love this. I love everything you've said and the people have shared. I really appreciate that because I think this is beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. In the back? Yeah, and then we'll come up. Jose, you still want to say something?
Happy Mother's Day, everybody. I wanted to speak about my own mother. She is such a great lady, and she was such a great mother, but I had a more complex relationship with my father. And I know there are a lot of victims of like a toxic masculinity and kind of this generation of like, be not so nurturing. And I just wish to see more men and fathers come into roles of nurturing and caring, not just for themselves, but for their own children.
May that be so. Anybody in the back before we come to Jose? Anybody else? Yeah, we have a few minutes.
I appreciate the practice, which has really helped so much with looking at my mother. And then as I got older, I looked at me as a mother. And that ability to get it, that just like her, I'm doing the best I can. And just like her, I make mistakes. And just like her, I show up just the best I can. And it's a wonderful practice to be forgiving of my mother, also consequently forgiving of myself and loving.
Thank you, Marilyn.
And we have another person online,
Okay, and
Krista.
then- yes?
Oh wait, Krista, you got to unmute yourself. Yep, you're muted. There you go.
Okay, sorry about that. Like a lot of the people here, I also have a complicated relationship with my mother. We both love each other very deeply. However, there's a lot of codependence. And there's a lot of similarities. I have a lot of, traits, personality traits of my mother, and some of them are good, but, there's some mental health issues that she had, that I also inherited. And sometimes I get a little resentful of that. So I'm trying to make peace with that. And you know, the thing is, my mother absolutely did the best she could. And you know I was difficult too. Definitely. Um, very difficult as a child. Um, so I have to look at that as well. She had her hands full.
Yeah,
Um,
I appreciate what you're saying, Christy, because again, we have the ability now as adults to see much wider and deeper than we did as children, right? In the sense way, you can understand her more that you couldn't when you were a child, and you realize, oh, there were two people in the relationship. She had to understand me, and I had mine. So I appreciate that. But thank you, Christy. And one more down here.
you're welcome.
Yes.
Hi, yes, I'm Thomas. I kind of grew up with defending my mom in a lot of ways.
Defending.
Yeah, I
This
felt
whole-
like I was her protector in a lot of ways. So that same way that she would look at me as like the innocent baby when I was just born of I am perfect in all ways, I looked at her in the same way, I think, of she is so pure and perfect, and I have to step up and see her as that, someone that needs to be protected. And what I notice now in my life is I still seek out my mom's love through other people when I'm not near her. So we moved here, and I find people that emulate my mom in some way. And I have to win their approval. And I also still finding myself putting my mom on a pedestal and saying, well, they're really close to my mom, but they're missing a few of these things. But happy Mother's Day. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, Jose?
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, and thank you, Fred. My mom was always very loving, and she was always there for me when I was young. I always remember her being like a pillar for me. My dad was a physician, and he was not too involved. He was busy. And so my mom would be the one that if I needed new sneakers, she would get them for me. Or if when I was studying and I would be struggling, she would be sitting there and spend hours studying with me. I remember studying English was one of my difficult courses, and my mom would be there teaching me. As I grew up, I manifested at some point that I wanted to be a veterinarian, and she was very excited about that. And she always supported me with that. But when I got in college, and I took all the science courses, then I started taking like philosophy and history, social sciences. And I was like, wait a minute, there's other things out there that I may be interested in. My mom would be like, those are great things, but you're gonna be a veterinarian. I was like, okay. All right. And so then, I wanted to make money on my own when I was in college. And so cable TV came to town. Everybody was like, wow, cable TV. So I got into the company that sells cable TV, and I was selling cable TV to everybody, and I would make more money than I ever made in my life. And they gave me a certificate. It was framed. I was so proud. And I went to my house and I showed my mom. They were having dinner, and I came in with my certificate. I showed it to her. Mom, look. And she stood up from the table. I thought she was going to give me a hug, and she started yelling at me. What are you going to do with your life? You're going to sell cable TV all your life? You're going to be a veterinarian. It's like, okay. And so, then I finally got into vet school. She supported me a lot financially and emotionally. And now I look back and I'm really grateful because she stood up for that. And I now practice a profession that I love. And it was because of her.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I mean, I realize only some people spoke, but hopefully the topic and listening to each other kind of got us thinking about things. But at the end of the day, yeah, grateful to our mothers. And again, so when you read, for those of you who are into the teachings, and you read about, a bodhisattva's love for all beings, it's like a mother's love for a child, or you read about motherly sentient beings, all beings have been my mother. I hope you now understand what, we're talking about the archetype, which is, the potential of all of us. It's inspiring us. So thank you, everyone. Happy Mother's Day.